All right, guys, we're looking at 5.2 absolute value, which starts on page 355. Just want everybody to take a look at this poor kid on page 355 who looks really excited to help his parents out with carrying groceries after they paid for it. Anyway, the vocabulary startup is the distance between a number and 0 on the number line is called its absolute value. So again, the distance between a number and 0 on the number line is called its absolute value. Number 1 says to mark each mark on the number line indicates 1 yard. It wants us to draw a tree that's 3 yards west of the house and draw a mailbox that's 3 yards east of the house. So we're going to do that now. This is a wonderful opportunity for you guys to see my amazing artistic ability. So here you go. Oh no. Okay. I had drawn this already and it won't let me show it to you again. So I'm going to have to do it again. All right. So here's my tree. And this is what's really going to make it amazing for you. It's an apple tree. And then, where's my mailbox? Okay, and then I'm going to draw my mailbox. With the flag. All right. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're welcome. All right, so it says to draw each of those, it says the distance between the house and the tree. So the house and the tree is blank the distance between the house and the mailbox. So what do you think? Notice this and notice this. What do you notice? Well, hopefully you're like, duh, Miss Eccles, it's equal to. And that's absolutely right. The tree and the mailbox, number 3 says, the tree and the mailbox are in blank directions of the house. Well, what do you notice? You've got your tree on one side and your mailbox on the other. What do you notice? That they are in opposite directions from the house. And then number 4 says, how does the number line above help you understand absolute value? I think it's a great representation, not only of my amazing artistic ability, but also absolute value, because it is showing us that, this is our 0 point right here, and if we're moving to the east in one direction, 3 spots, oops, sorry, too many jumps, 1, 2, 3 spots, and we move to the west, the same amount of spots, that we really are the same amount of distance between the two. Okay? We are still 3 yards away from the mailbox and 3 yards away from our amazing tree. Oop, oop, doop, oop, doop. Don't look, don't look. All right, so I've drawn this amazing picture. Sorry about that. It says, Jesse leaves home and walks 4 blocks west to the grocery store to buy milk and then returns home. He then walks another 4 blocks east to the post office. So compare the distance and the direction of Jesse's house and the post office from the grocery store. So we've got Jesse says 4 blocks to go to the grocery store. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 to get to grocery store, and then back. Okay. Now to go to the post office, it said it was 4 more blocks from home, but going east. So now we've got 4 blocks going to the east. Now it's saying that it wants us to compare the distance from Jesse's house to the grocery store and the post office to the grocery store. So I want to really look at that for just a second here. So we've got Jesse's house from the grocery store is the 4 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So that was our 4 blocks. But to go to the post office from the grocery store, how many blocks would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So notice that your 4 blocks from home to post office plus your 4 blocks from home to grocery store are combined to make the total distance 8 blocks. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well? I hope I did. So again, it's 4 blocks to the grocery store from home and 4 blocks to the post office from home, the opposite direction. But if we're talking about the entire walk from grocery store to post office or post office to grocery store, the entire distance doesn't cancel each other out like you would think a positive and negative number would. We actually would combine the two amounts and make it 8. All right, so find opposites. Positive numbers such as 2 are graphed to the right or above 0 on the number line. And when it says above, remember that we can talk about our temperatures, where here's our temperature at 0, down here is our negatives, and up here is our positives, okay? So either to the right are the positives or up are the positives, okay? And the negative numbers, such as -2, are graphed to the left, negative numbers, or below, okay? That's where our negative numbers are as well. Opposites are numbers that are the same distance from 0 in opposite direction. So since 0 is not a negative nor a positive, 0 is its own opposite, okay? The opposite of a number is the number itself. So, for example, the opposite of 3. The opposite of 3 would be -3, but the opposite of that would be +3. Does that make sense? The opposite of the opposite, like anybody talks like that, right? The opposite of the opposite. So if I said 3 is our number and I'm looking for the opposite, then I'd say, okay, that means -3. But then I'm saying, okay, I want the opposite of that. That would put me back at the +3. So let's go over that again so that you guys can really understand this. So the opposite of the opposite. So I'm saying that, let's say for this time that my number is -5. And I want to know the opposite of -5. So the opposite would be 5, and the opposite of that would be -5. So look at that. We went right back to the -5. Okay? I like how they're explaining this. All right, so it says find the opposite of -5. Method 1 is using the number line, where you can draw a number line and graph -5. And then you know that the equal distance from 0, the opposite direction, is the opposite of -5. So going the opposite direction would be the positive direction. That would make it +5. The other one is just using symbols. That the integer -5 uses the negative symbol, so the opposite of the negative would be a positive. So if it's a -5, the opposite of that is going to be a +5. All right. So number 2 says find the opposite of 4. And I love how they're doing this. So they're saying, okay, the opposite of 4. So the opposite of 4 would be -4. The opposite of -4 would be +4. And they're showing it on the number line that the opposite, so this is where we start at our +4. The opposite would be -4, but we're doing the opposite of that, which would put us back over to +4. The opposite of 4. All right, so now we want to know what the opposite of 3 is and what the opposite of -2 is. All right, go ahead and do A and B on your own. Please pause the video now. You can decide whether or not you want to use the number line or just positive and negatives, okay, the symbols. Go for it. All right, for A, it says the opposite of 3, and just thinking in terms of positive and negative, the opposite of positive is negative. So I've got -3. For B, it's the opposite of -2. So I started with my -2, and then I wanted to find the opposite of that for my first opposite. That's +2, but then I need to find the opposite of that again, and that puts me back at -2. Absolute value. The absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line. So just like we were talking about with that 3 yards from the house to the tree and 3 yards from the house to the mailbox, no matter which direction you're going, we're talking about the amount of units away from 0 we are. The absolute value is shown with the symbols where we've got like the walls. Okay, so if I've got the absolute value of 5, I want to know how far away from 0 that 5 is? The walls, okay? If I've got negative 5 absolute value, I'm trying to again figure out how many places away from 0 is negative 5. So it's not, so they're using the term opposite a lot, and I just want to make sure that you understand that we're not talking about the opposite here. This is the distance away from 0, okay? And these both end up being the absolute value of 5 and the absolute value of negative 5 are both 5 units away from 0. Now the integers negative 4 and positive 4 are each 4 units from 0, even though they are on opposite sides of 0. So the absolute value of negative 4 is read as absolute value of negative 4. Since distance cannot be negative, the absolute value of a number is always positive or 0. Okay, because we're talking about the distance from 0. We don't go negative when we're going to count the distance from 0. Although it could be 0. It can't be negative though. Alright, so number 3 says evaluate negative 7. So negative 7, the absolute value of negative 7 is 7 units from 0. Therefore, the answer is 7. Evaluate the absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of negative 6. First thing we need to do with this is find out what numbers these two terms are. Absolute value of 5 is 5 plus the absolute value of negative 6, which is positive 6. Again, meaning absolute value is how far away from 0 they are. Absolute value of 5 is 5. Absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. And when we add those two together, we get 11. Number 5 says the absolute value of negative 7 minus the absolute value of 3. And again, I'm just going to focus in on my absolute values here. The absolute value of negative 7 is positive 7 minus the absolute value of 3, which is 3. And then I'm able to do 7 minus 3 is 4. So you're going to do C, D, and E on your own. Again, for D and E, focus mainly on solving for the absolute values and then solving the actual expression. All right, pause your video now. All right, so for C, we're just talking about a standard 14. The absolute value of 14 is 14. D, the absolute value of negative 9 plus the absolute value of 3. We're going to do the absolute value of negative 9, which is 9, the absolute value of 3, which is 3, and then we can do 9 plus 3 is 12. For E, the absolute value of negative 1 minus the absolute value of negative 2. We find those absolute values first, which will be positive 8 and positive 2, and then we subtract and we get 6. Example number 6 says a seagull is flying 25 feet above sea level. You know I'm not going to get this right. So this kid is, yeah, I guess it's a kid. I have no idea. Okay, so this kid is diving 15 feet below sea level. What is the distance between the kid and the seagull? All right, I'm going to draw my little deal here. So sea level is at 0, okay? And the kid is diving in, and he's gone down to negative 5 because below sea level means negative 15. Sorry, 15. So this is the kid, okay? And then the seagull, I'll wait until you see this one, is 25 feet above. So that's positive. And this is the, oh yeah, I know. You were not expecting this kind of artistic ability. That's the bird. So if I'm trying to figure out the distance between these two people, or sorry, the bird and this kid, I need to figure out the distance from here to here and the distance from here to here, and then combine those two together. So this is going to be 25, this is going to be 15. When I add them together, I find that it's 40 feet is the total distance from 25 to negative 15. And I do that by finding the absolute value of that negative. All right, guys, this ends the absolute value section. I hope that you enjoyed my major amazing artistic abilities, and I look forward to seeing you at school. See you soon.